Well, Frasier fans, this is the one we've been waiting for all season, the return to Seattle and KACL, Bulldog and Gil returning as well. Let's talk about Thank You, Dr. Crane. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my Frasier review. We are in season 2, episode 8, which means there's only a couple left after this one. But this is the one that I've been referencing all season. I wasn't quite sure when the season started when this was going to pop up, but I saw that Bulldog and Gil were returning at some point this season, and this is the episode: the return to Seattle, the return to KACL. And I have to admit, spoiler for my review, I think it's one of the weaker episodes of the season. So we'll talk about why here in just a second. But first, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are new here, I do the Frasier reviews every single week that there is a new Frasier episode. But look, I do a lot of other things on the channel, movie and TV-wise. I try to post something just about every day. So there's always a lot to check out. So please consider subscribing and click that notification bell so you get the alerts for all my drops. But also like this video and comment below. I love interacting with the Frasier fans about how these episodes are working for them. Whether or not you're in agreement with me, I love interacting with you guys. So please do comment below with your thoughts on this episode. Maybe this is one of your favorites. I'm not sure. For me, didn't quite hit, and we'll talk about the reasons why here in just a second. But yes, anyway. Thank You, Dr. Crane is the name of the episode. Kelsey Grammer returns to direct. This is his third episode of this season to direct. He directed numbers 2 and 3. I'm sure that's, part of his contract. He directs so many per season or whatever. He loves to be in the director's chair. And he's a fine sitcom director. There's, nothing necessarily special or splashy about what he does, but his episodes are always, fine. And this was written by Stephen Lloyd, who wrote the second episode from the first season. He has not gotten the writer's credit since then, but I'm sure he has some sort of relation. I did not look this up because he doesn't have his own Wikipedia page, but he's probably on IMDb, I guess. But the original show, Christopher Lloyd, not the Back to the Future Christopher Lloyd, but there's a writer, Christopher Lloyd, who took part in a lot of the original Frasier episodes. I think he may have a producer credit on the original show as well. So I'm thinking maybe this is his son or something. But Stephen Lloyd, look, Lloyd is not the most uncommon last name, so it could be no relation at all. But I'm just thinking through the Frasier family. I should look that up. But all right. And the episode, like I said, is called Thank You, Dr. Crane. So we have returning members from the original cast. Well, Perry Gilpin as Roz is back. She's been in, is this the 4th episode of the season she's been in? I think that's true. Or at least the 3rd. But we also have returning as Bulldog Briscoe, Dan Butler, and then Edward Hibbert returning as Gil Chesterton, the food critic from KACL. And essentially there's some anniversary special for KACL going on, so they're trying to bring a bunch of their, classic members back. Obviously, Frasier's radio show ran for many, many years on KACL, so he is, one of the standard bearers of that station. And it is honestly believable that Gil and Bulldog would both still be working there, and Roz as well. I mean, I worked in radio for many years, about 10 years after college, and I mean, people stay. I mean, if they like what they're doing, if the station, likes them, if they're getting good ratings, obviously, and you've all listened to the radio, certain morning shows have been on for decades because they work. So it makes sense to me that a couple of these guys would still be hanging out doing their shows. Let's talk, before we get to sort of the Seattle of it all, let's talk about the B story, because I think that they were looking for something to be happening back in Boston, because it wouldn't make sense for everyone in the cast to go to Seattle. So you have Freddie going, which makes sense. His father wants to see him at work and all of this. And Freddie wants to go see a Mariners game, which never ends up happening. But everybody else, Olivia, Eve, and David, and Alan all stay behind. And so the B story revolves around David being Alan's assistant, and that has not really reared its head this season. Last season, it was touched on many times, but this season, I can't remember if they've even so much as referenced it. Maybe they have, but no plots have revolved around it this season, and so they decided to throw them one while everybody else was in Seattle. But it turns out that David is kind of getting on Alan's nerves, and so he essentially pawns him off on Olivia. He says, well, actually, it's David's idea. He's like, you know what? I'm done with you and your demands. Olivia, are you looking for an assistant of your own? And she kind of, shies that away, but he says, oh no, I'll be your assistant. I mean, look, she could have just easily said, no, I don't need an assistant. Thank you. I'm square. And that's the end of that. But of course they had to make it, a plot. So he becomes her assistant, and he ends up, erasing part of her thesis on her whiteboard, and it's, obviously a disaster. Meanwhile, Alan brings in another much like David person, sort of uptight, nerdy, whatever, and David's like, oh, I hate this guy. I want to come back, this and that. I thought the whole plot was kind of stupid. It didn't really make sense. Because I don't know. Alan doesn't seem like he cares enough about anything. And if he's got a good assistant in David, sure, I'm sure that he is, demanding with his, let's do my dishes and clean my car and whatever. He's having him do these errands and chores more than assisting with the teaching stuff. So I get it. David's, frustrated with that. But I don't know. It seemed like not the best plot. I really didn't like it. And then Eve, we saw briefly at the beginning, saying, hey, I'm gonna water your plants and maybe have some of your wine, Dr. Crane, while you're gone. He's like, I don't have any plants. Oh, I'll get you some, so she can sneak the wine. That's like her one joke in the show. And then she appears over the end credits as well. I think they were really, really trying to shoehorn in the side characters, looking for something, anything for them to do while the rest of the gang is in Seattle. Look, I get it. There's only 10 episodes, so you want everybody to be a part of every episode. But to be honest, I just don't think we needed that at all. This could just have been an A-story episode. Every episode doesn't need, multiple storylines. If, the whole thing is taking place in Seattle, that's what the audience wants, right? We've wanted this Seattle episode for the whole season. So give us that. And you can have everybody else at the bar in the beginning, just kind of hanging out or talking about the Seattle trip or whatever, and then just let them go. I really did not like the side plot of this episode. So all right, so let's talk about the Seattle of it all. So Freddie never gets to go to the Mariners game. That's established. Early on he says, oh, yeah, I'll come catch a game, whatever. And it becomes kind of a running joke. That I did not mind. I kind of liked that. And in fact, it gets referenced again at the end when Frasier feels like he, has kind of saved the day. And he's like, oh, isn't this better than anything going to the Mariners game? And Freddie says no. So that's kind of funny. And there's some funny gags kind of along the way with that. But you have Roz sort of doing this interview piece, I guess, for the KACL anniversary special about everything. So she's kind of, recording the conversations and interviewing Frasier kind of off and on throughout the episode. That was nice. That was kind of some funny jokes there when, she wasn't rolling at certain times and whatever. But it showed us a little bit of what Roz has kind of moved into. I mean, she's obviously still taking calls in the one scene. But, I like that she's moved on a little bit to, maybe some news items at the station or whatever. I don't think it's ever really quite established exactly, what her current role at KACL is. Maybe I missed it, but she's doing fine there. So we get there, and look, if you've been following along, Certainly, it was on the Wikipedia page. It was on, in some of the news articles that, came out like Variety or whatever, that, hey, these guys are going to be returning at some point this season, and it's going to be great. So it wasn't a shock to us, the viewer, but I suppose if you were in the live audience, I don't know when they film these, how early they film these, but the word may not have gotten out yet that these guys were in it, so I could see some excitement there. And they wash away any doubt of Niles because they mentioned, and I thought this was actually pretty smart because obviously we're all going to be, thinking, well, if you're going to Seattle, you're going to obviously go see your brother, go see, your sister-in-law Daphne. Freddie wants to see his aunt and uncle. So it makes perfect sense that we would all be wanting that. So I do like that they kind of said, well, hey, everybody, that's not going to happen. They basically say that they moved to Sedona and they're not in Seattle anymore and whatever. There was a couple of jokes with that, but that kind of I think made it clear that, okay, look, we're probably not going to see David Hyde Pierce. I don't know if ever on this show. Maybe he will relent with what he has said, but I still think it would make sense. This is kind of an aside, but for Jane Leeves as Daphne to at least come visit Boston. If David Hyde Pierce doesn't want to be a part of it, okay, but if their son is in Boston, it would make sense for at least maybe Daphne at one point to come visit. But maybe that's part of season 3. Who knows? But for now, we've got Bulldog and Gil. And they did a little bit of a bait and switch with which I thought was funny, because Roz mentions that one of them has come out, and of course, we all think, oh well, it's Gil. He's obviously been fey and a bit in the closet this whole time, going back to the '90s. But look, the actor that plays Bulldog, Dan Butler, is gay in real life, so I love that they made him the gay one. And Frasier's like, oh, so you were just kind of covering, with all this toxic masculinity. And Bulldog goes, no, I'm still all about that, but I'm into dudes now. And then right away he recognized, Freddie turned around and he recognized Freddie's butt from the Boston firefighters calendar. I mean, that was a great line. Maybe my favorite line in the whole show. I thought that was very funny. And look, I've always liked the Bulldog character. He was a little bit one note, I think, for a while, but as the original series went on, they gave him layers, and that's more than I can say, honestly, for some of the other staff at KSEL. I don't think Gil ever got more than really, he's obviously in the closet, and he's, a prissy food critic, and that's kind of it. Like, they never really gave him more than that. And so here, his only thing other than those kind of prissy comments is that he wants to incorporate songs into his food reviews, but they can't get the rights to them, which I'm torn with that joke, because as a radio person, I just don't think that's realistic. Obviously, KSEL is owned by a conglomerate that has music stations in their portfolio, and they would have all the rights to all of that music. But whatever, that's a minor nitpick from a radio person. So we'll let that go, I guess, for the sake of the joke. But yeah, didn't make a ton of sense. But yeah, they never really fleshed out Gil's character in the original run. So I don't know. Yeah, was it nice to see him? I guess. But like Noel, I liked a little bit more. I think there was more depth to his character. But whatever. Bulldog was great to see, of course, and loved that interaction. But let's get back to the Frasier storyline here. So Roz thought it would be a good idea to get some old callers in, people whose lives he's changed, maybe, or whatever. And they must have put a call out for that, because they wouldn't have kept the phone numbers or whatever. But she was able to track down one, and they decided to meet at Cafe Nervosa. And I was hoping they would do some sort of like, update of Cafe Nervosa. And sure enough, they did. That they put some couches in there, and everything looks a little bit different. And Frasier hates it. I liked that touch. That was pretty nice. But they find this one guy who turns out, Frasier's advice 20 years ago was not great. Look, at the time he thought it was fine, but this brings up a lot of the problems that Niles had always mentioned with the radio show. It's sort of this pop psychiatry where you call in for 3-4 minutes, and you think, your problems are solved. So anyway, back then, and this wasn't a call that we had ever heard on the actual show or anything, but he said for this guy to follow his dream and, get it going if he's not happy with his life. So he quits his job as a lawyer and is now a magician, and he's terrible at it. A failing magician, I should say, of 20 years. And his wife divorced him. His kids hate him, which turns out it might not even be his kids. His wife's new husband, emasculates him all the time, putting him in a headlock and all of this. And so Frasier's like, and Freddie's seeing this all unfold and, had already kind of poked fun at his father, not kind of, but said, didn't you just basically say, a lot on your show? Wasn't that basically the whole bit? And Frasier was like, no, it was so much more than that, whatever. So, and I didn't love that part either necessarily of Frasier kind of disrespecting his father. I mean, he obviously was a very accomplished radio host and then moved into what became a very popular TV show that, we the audience have not really gotten to see much of yet, except for, a couple of scenes in season 1. But, in the time between the 90s Frasier show and this new reboot, he was a very popular TV host or whatever. So I don't know. I get that, like, he's maybe, kind of poking fun, but like it seems like he just doesn't respect his dad's job at all in this episode. I don't know, whatever. I have mixed feelings about that. But anyway, this guy is a complete mess. And Roz is, of course, recording this whole thing for the news piece. So they decide, okay, well, Frasier decides, we got to get this guy back here. I have to really sit down with him and see what's going on here. And one of the things is he's, petrified of clocks. So Frasier tries to kind of get to the bottom of that and successfully does it. By saying, oh, does your wife's new husband wear a watch? Maybe when he puts you in the headlock, you hear the ticking, whatever. And so they piece it together that way. And oh my God, I'm cured. This is great. But it turns out Frasier also gives him some advice that next time his wife's new man puts him in the headlock to, get his arms away, whatever, fight back, essentially. And so he does this, but it turns out that this guy's in a wheelchair, and now he's pressing charges, and this and that and the other thing. First of all, look, if you're in a wheelchair or not, if you're assaulting someone, I think that, they would have the right to defend themselves, so that seems, a little bit odd. But anyway, he basically sits him down and says, look, the magic clearly is not working out. I think you need to move on if something's not working for you, and we all as the audience picked up, okay, he's maybe not just talking about this dude, he's talking a little bit about Roz and maybe a little bit about himself as well, saying, maybe the past is best left in the past and blah, blah, blah. So after they kind of come to that realization with the caller, Frasier says, hey, did you get what I was saying there? And Roz agrees that, yes, maybe it is time for her to move on. And she basically says, yeah, I do think I need a change. And he suggests moving into Boston because her daughter Alice is there at school. And look, I said this a couple of episodes ago when we saw Roz for like the second or third time this season. I said, look, it makes sense for her to move to Boston, be a part of this show. She clearly is a highlight whenever she is on. So it would make sense. The producers would have to be idiots not to present this to Perry Gilpin, who plays Roz. And, maybe they did at the start and she, didn't want to go for it. Or maybe Kelsey Grammer was like, look, I want to have another fresh start for this character. Let's not, rope everybody from the old series into it. Or maybe one by one they were saying no and whatever. But in any event, look, Perry Gilpin is a very talented actress, but it's not like she's, making 3 movies a year or anything. I have not seen her, too often. So it makes sense for her to, come on back to Frasier, come on back home, So it seems like starting in the next season, or maybe even in these last couple of episodes this season, that Roz will be a fixture in the Frasier universe, which I love. I think it is exactly what the show needs as we are, kind of giving the supporting characters something new to do and giving them lives of their own. I think the first season struggled with that, and this season, I think, really, most of the supporting characters are coming into their own. Even David, who I think a lot of people did not really care for in season one. I think even he's coming into his own with the new season. So I think Roz's character really gels with them, and I think she is better for Eve and Olivia because I think, other than David, they are a couple of the other characters that I've struggled with appreciating. And so I think Roz is like that one episode where Roz took them out for girls' night. I think that really kind of upped the game of some of those supporting characters. So I love this idea. It's my favorite thing that has come out of this episode because this episode, for the most part, was not great. But I love that they finally established, yes, let's bring Roz, back to the show and move her to Boston. And I do also like, by the way, so they do the Boston skyline now at the intro of Frasier, and I like that after that opening scene at Mahoney's Bar, we have the old Seattle skyline intro. I thought that was a nice, cute touch, so I will give it credit for that. And I liked that at the end of the episode, when they kind of were wrapping everything up, they went to McGinty's, the old bar of Martin's, his favorite bar. And there was a fun twist at the end of that, too. It turns out it's a gay bar. They're like, oh, this is so great. Dad would have loved this. Oh, yeah, Grandpa, always came here, and I came here with him when I had beer one time, whatever, which the timeline, Frasier figured out he was 17, and he's like, oh, let's not dwell on the past, because Frasier just had that whole speech about it. But then Bulldog turns around and he says, oh, what are you guys doing in a gay bar? And they realize, okay, some things do change. So I like that ending. I mean, that was funny. One of the highlights of the episode for sure. But overall, this was definitely not a great episode. In fact, I think it might be my least favorite of the season. It certainly had a few laughs, but I think they were definitely trying way too hard to give the supporting characters something to do back in Boston. That didn't work for me. And, Gil, he's fine, but his character has always been kind of one note. So although it was nice to see him, he never gave me a ton of laughs in the original show anyway. The Bulldog stuff was good, and the idea of bringing Roz back, to Boston is great. And look, obviously, Frasier majorly messing up this guy's entire life. That's par for the course. He thinks he's helping somebody, and he's not. That's a well ridden trail because it works. So that part I liked. But overall, this was just not that great of an episode. It was okay. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it with a C plus. Unfortunately, but I do like the idea that we're getting Roz back to Boston, as I've said many times throughout this video. So, but what did you think? Like I mentioned up top, let me know in the comments. Maybe this one really worked for you. Maybe it was firing on all cylinders. I don't know. For me, not so much. But we have 2 episodes left for the season, and we are getting another Christmas episode, the finale, which is going to be in 2 weeks, a little bit before Christmas, but with this, the streaming world only having so many episodes per season, holiday episodes are kind of hard to come by. So I like that they're at least doing a Christmas episode, whatever the time frame. But we'll see that in a couple of weeks. But thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.